The Phantom of the Winter Wonderland, a Judge. Judy Mystery of Missing Magic and a $500 Dream. The air in Judge Judy's courtroom was thick with the scent of shattered expectations and the quiet, desperate hope for justice, a stark contrast to the magical evening that was supposed to have been, an evening that now existed only in the broken promises and blurry photographs held in the trembling hands of the plaintiff, a dedicated woman named Susan, the organizer for a group of young debutantes whose grand ball had been forever tarnished. Susan, her voice a mixture of steely resolve and profound disappointment, stood before the formidable Judge Judy, a woman whose gaze could dissect a lie from a mile away, and began to unravel a tale not of a simple contract dispute, but of a stolen fantasy, a winter wonderland that had melted into a dismal, sickly green void. "Your Honor," Susan began, her words measured but charged with emotion. "We had 4 girls last year, 4 bright young women on the cusp of adulthood, dreaming of a night of elegance and celebration, a night meant to be frozen in time through beautiful, professional photography." She described the culmination of their year-long efforts, a magnificent ball, an event where these debutantes would be presented to their community, a moment of pride for them and their families, a memory that demanded to be perfect. "And to capture this magic," Susan continued, her eyes locking with the defendants, a photographer named Robert, "we hired him." The word "him" hung in the air, heavy with accusation. Robert sat, looking more like a confused artist than a cunning businessman, seemingly oblivious to the depth of the betrayal Susan felt. "We paid him $500, she stated, and the number, though not astronomically large, represented a significant investment for their organization, a sum paid for a dream that was never delivered. "And I want that money back," Susan declared, her voice firming, "because he did not do a good job, not at all, Your Honor. He failed us completely." Judge Judy, a pillar of no-nonsense pragmatism in a world of flimsy excuses, peered over her bench, her interest piqued. "You want your money back because you claim he didn't do a good job," she reiterated, not as a question, but as a challenge for Susan to prove her case. Susan, ready for this moment, had brought the evidence, the pathetic ghosts of what should have been glorious portraits. "The pictures," she said, brandishing them like exhibits in a crime, "which I could show you copies of. They were taken with a green background, a stark, ugly, artificial green that screams amateur and cheap. But we had paid for, a specific, beautiful, enchanting winter wonderland background, which was not provided, not even glimpsed, in the final production of the pictures." This was the heart of the grievance. It wasn't just about technical quality. It was about a promised theme, a curated atmosphere that had vanished without a trace. Judge Judy, zeroing in on the contractual core of the issue, demanded clarity. "Who purchased the Winter Wonderland backdrop?" she asked, her tone sharp. "I paid Mr. Robert for the photography and video," Susan explained, a flicker of frustration crossing her face at having to state the obvious. "It was a part of the package, Your Honor, an integral part. The very backdrop that was supposed to transform a simple photo into a keepsake, a treasure." A wrinkle of confusion appeared on Judge Judy's brow. "Wait just a second. Who did you purchase it from?" she pressed, wanting to untangle the web of responsibility. "From Mr. Robert," Susan affirmed, solidifying the photographer's role as both the creator and the provider of this specific magical element. "So, you were supposed to use a Winter Wonderland background when he did the still photography?" Judge Judy clarified, picturing a physical sheet or screen at the event. "Yes, ma'am," Susan confirmed. "That was supposed to be the final production." But Judge Judy, a stranger to the modern sorcery of digital editing, admitted, "I don't know what that means." Susan patiently elaborated. "The product that he would send to me at the end of the production should have been on that backdrop. And instead," she gestured helplessly at the green monstrosities, "we got this." She explained that Robert wasn't supposed to haul a physical winter scene to the ball. The magic was supposed to happen later, in the digital darkroom, where he would expertly edit and transpose the girls onto the purchased fantasy landscape. It was a promise of post-production wizardry, a spell that was never cast. Judge Judy, ever the pragmatist, called for the exhibits. "Let me see what the pictures you are complaining about look like." But before delving into the visual evidence, she established a key fact. "He did come and do the event, is that correct?" she asked, ensuring the man hadn't simply taken the money and fled. "Yes, ma'am, he did the actual event," Susan conceded, acknowledging that Robert had at the very least shown up, then correcting the record on the payment. "And when you hired him and gave him the $500, Susan interjected. A small but important correction that highlighted the modest budget they were working with. "Or $500, Judge Judy amended. "Did you tell him that he would be able to make extra money from the girls buying their photographs?" This was a crucial piece of the business arrangement, a potential motive for cutting corners. "Yes, ma'am, that was—" Susan started, but Judge Judy cut her off with a raised hand and a firm, "Just a second. Did you tell him that is my question?" "Yes, ma'am," Susan confirmed, sealing that part of the agreement. The stage was set. Then the evidence was presented. The photographs were, as described, set against a glaring, unedited green screen. It was the green of nausea, of inexperience, a color that sucked the life and elegance out of the girls' beautiful dresses and hopeful smiles. "This is clearly against a green backdrop," Judge Judy observed, her eyes taking in the dismal scenes. "Were you supposed to provide a different backdrop?" she asked, giving Robert one last chance to explain this glaring discrepancy. It was then that Robert, the defendant, finally spoke, and his explanation was a labyrinth of excuses and technical jargon that only deepened the mystery. He spoke of backdrops ordered from China, of delayed deposits, of a plan B that sounded more like a plan for disaster. "We were originally going to get a backdrop purchased off Amazon," he began, his words tumbling out in a defensive rush. "Where they were coming from was China, and the deposit wasn't made till really close to the event, so we weren't able to do that." He was already shifting blame, pointing fingers at vague international shipping delays. Then came his version of the promise. "What I told her is I'd be able to do the backdrop on the green screen and then switch it out in editing." He admitted the green screen was always the plan, a blank canvas for his digital artistry. The critical question hung in the tense air. "Did you do that?" Judge Judy asked, her voice a sharp scalpel ready to cut to the truth. Robert's answer was a masterclass in deflection. "I wasn't able to," he confessed, but quickly followed with a blame-shifting bombshell. "She told me to stop putting it online." He painted a picture of a two-part process. First, basic edits in a program called Adobe Lightroom to bring out the colors, and then a second, crucial stage where the backdrop magic would happen on an online platform where parents could order prints. "She didn't want any ordering to be done online," Robert claimed, portraying Susan as the one who had sabotaged her own winter wonderland by refusing the digital storefront, thus halting the entire backdrop process. It was a clever, almost plausible excuse, suggesting that Susan's own preferences had prevented him from completing the job she was paying him for. But Judge Judy was not so easily swayed. She saw through the technical smokescreen. "But you can put it on a different background other than this green. I mean, the green isn't terrible, but you can put it on," she challenged, pointing out the fundamental flaw in his logic. If he had the skill to add a backdrop online, he surely had the skill to do it offline and simply send the finished files. "Correct," Robert mumbled, his defense beginning to crumble under the weight of its own inconsistency. The horror show, however, was not over. Susan then introduced the video evidence, and what followed was a cinematic tragedy. The screen, presumably shown to the court, displayed clips that were an insult to the very idea of professional videography. "This particular video is one of the dances with the debutantes alone at the ball," Susan narrated, her voice thick with the pain of reliving the disappointment. "And the 4 girls. And as you can see, the lighting's not very well, it's very dark, a lot of movements, blurry." The description was a gross understatement. The video was a murky, shaky, poorly lit mess, capturing none of the grace of the dancers, only their ghostly, blurred forms moving in a gloom that resembled a haunted house more than a celebratory ball. And then this is a different video clip, Susan said, likely presenting another example of the same dismal quality. Judge Judy, with a wave of her hand, silenced any further commentary. "Just a second, I'm looking. I don't need somebody to tell me what I'm looking at," she stated, her sharp eyes absorbing the full extent of the failure. The proof was undeniable. The videos were unwatchable, the photographs were unfinished, and the promised winter wonderland was a barren digital wasteland. In her final plea, Susan synthesized all her grievances, her emotions rising to the surface. "That would be correct," she said, confirming her unhappiness with the quality. "And I'm also unhappy with the fact that I did not get the backdrop that I paid for. Because the pictures that you see there were supposed to be for purchase for the parents if they wanted to purchase packages of the event that they would be able to do so, but with that green background, it doesn't provide us what we were looking for professionally." Her dream was not just for herself, but for the parents, for the girls, for a community that had invested its hope in a perfect memory. The green background was a symbol of the entire failed enterprise. Unprofessional, unfinished, and utterly devoid of the magic they had purchased. Judge Judy, having heard enough, delivered her signature brand of blunt, practical wisdom. "Don't use him again," she advised, a simple, powerful verdict on Robert's professional capabilities. But Robert, seemingly unable to accept the totality of his failure, tried to get in one last pathetic word. "He says that," he began, but whatever excuse or justification he was about to offer was lost, cut off by the overwhelming weight of the evidence against him. A man who promised a winter wonderland but delivered only a bitter, green-tinged frost. Lesson for the listeners and viewers. This case serves as a stark reminder that a contract, whether a formal document or a verbal agreement, is a sacred promise of performance, not just intention. When you hire a professional, you are paying for a finished product that meets the agreed-upon specifications, not for a list of excuses, technical jargon, or blame-shifting explanations. Always get the details of the service, including the specifics of the final deliverable, in writing if possible, and do not accept partial or subpar work. The defendant in this story failed on every level. The quality was poor, the promised elements were missing, and the attempt to deflect responsibility only confirmed his unprofessionalism. Let this be a lesson to always hold service providers accountable for delivering exactly what was promised, because memories are precious, and they deserve to be preserved with the quality and care you pay for.